For decades, the US was the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, flexing its military and economic muscles. But lately, something's changed. China is rising, BRICS is expanding, and countries that used to take orders from Washington are now more like, yeah, we'll get back to you. So, is the US actually losing its grip on world power? Let's break down exactly what's happening, why it matters, and what it means for the future. Before we discuss the current state of US influence, let's take a step back. How did the US become a global powerhouse? The journey involves winning significant, albeit challenging wars, establishing a formidable military presence, and creating a financial system that positioned the US dollar as a global standard. However, power, like a flag in a storm, is never guaranteed to last. The very elements that propelled the US to the top are now facing significant challenges. Picture being the most influential player on the field. For a time, everyone wants to be on your team. But what happens when new players enter the game? Suddenly, maintaining that dominance becomes a challenge. This is the situation the US finds itself in today. Imagine it, 1945. World War II has just ended, and much of Europe is in ruins. The US, however, emerged relatively unscathed, with its industrial sector thriving. Through the Marshall Plan, the US provided financial aid to help rebuild Europe, promoting economic recovery and democratic governance. This era also saw the establishment of key institutions like NATO, the World Bank, and the United Nations, all significantly influenced by the US. It marked the beginning of what is often referred to as the American century, a period when the US played a leading role in global affairs. However, global power dynamics are always shifting. And now, the US faces new challenges in maintaining its influence on the world stage. Let's discuss the influence of currency in geopolitics, where financial power often speaks the loudest. For decades, the US dollar has been the cornerstone of the global financial system. It serves as the world's reserve currency, with countries holding substantial reserves of US dollars. This status provides the US with significant economic leverage. The ability to conduct transactions globally in its own currency is a unique advantage for the US. However, this advantageous position is beginning to face challenges. Nations such as China and Russia are increasingly advocating for trade in their own currencies. Even oil transactions, traditionally priced in dollars, are beginning to shift towards other currencies. While the dollar is unlikely to lose its prominence overnight, the gradual move away from the dollar indicates a decline in US economic dominance. This trend is certainly one to monitor closely. Let's address the significant and costly presence of the US military. With extensive firepower and advanced technology, and military bases strategically positioned around the globe, the US military has long been a symbol of American strength. However, even the most powerful military cannot defy the principles of diminishing returns, particularly when it is overextended. The conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan have depleted resources and stretched personnel. Concurrently, China has been significantly investing in and modernizing its military, enhancing its capabilities and global influence. This scenario resembles a strategic game of Risk, but with profound real-world implications. Thus far, we have established that the United States is no longer the unassailable superpower it once was. But is this merely a temporary setback, or are we witnessing the onset of a significant power transition? Let us examine some of the warning signs. Firstly, emerging nations are beginning to challenge the United States on the global stage. These nations are forming their own alliances. BRICS, in particular, is becoming a formidable entity, attracting countries seeking an alternative to the US-led global order. Secondly, the US dollar is beginning to lose its dominance. As more countries opt to trade without the dollar, the United States loses both leverage and influence. Lastly, there is the matter of military strength. Although the United States still allocates more funds to defense than any other nation, recent conflicts have highlighted its vulnerabilities. It is akin to realizing that a large, fuel-inefficient vehicle is not practical when stuck in traffic behind more agile electric cars. Let us address the significant presence of China. China's economic ascent has been extraordinary. It has transformed from a nation grappling with poverty to a formidable global economic force. Some analysts forecast that China's economy could surpass that of the United States within the next decade. While economic size does not inherently equate to global dominance, it does afford China considerable influence. China is making substantial investments in infrastructure, technology, and its military. And China is not alone. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are gaining increasing influence. Countries such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, once firmly aligned with the United States, are now diversifying their alliances, engaging more with China and Russia. This shift in global dynamics is significant and noteworthy. Recall how we mentioned the significance of the United States dollar? This significance is now encountering substantial competition. As China's economic influence expands, so does the appeal of the Chinese yuan. An increasing number of countries are adopting the yuan for trade, and it extends beyond China. Russia, India, and other nations are also advocating for the use of their own currencies in international transactions. This shift away from the dollar carries significant implications for the United States. It diminishes their economic leverage, increases borrowing costs, and generally reduces their influence on the global stage. It is akin to discovering that a once exclusive platinum credit card has been downgraded to a basic no-frills debit card. It is important to acknowledge that the United States still possesses the most formidable military in the world. However, as history has shown, military strength alone does not guarantee global supremacy. Recent developments have highlighted the constraints of American military power, such as the disorganized withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the ongoing challenge of countering China's assertiveness in the Pacific region. On the diplomatic front, the situation is equally concerning. Long-standing allies in Europe and the Middle East are increasingly questioning U.S. leadership. They are weary of being compelled to support American military interventions and are frustrated by unpredictable shifts in foreign policy. It is akin to hosting an event and realizing that many of your guests are contemplating leaving early to join another gathering. If the world is no longer led by the United States, what does it look like? We are now entering an era of multipolarity. Instead of a single dominant power, we now have multiple power centers: the United States, China, the European Union, Russia, India, and others, all competing for influence. It is complex, unpredictable, and dynamic. In this multipolar world, alliances are fluid, cooperation is often transactional, and competition is intense. It is a world where countries like Turkey can engage with both sides, maintaining relations with Russia while being a NATO member. It is a world where economic power often surpasses military strength, where cyber warfare is the new battleground, and where soft power, such as K-pop and Bollywood, can be surprisingly effective compared to traditional military power. It is evident that the United States no longer holds unilateral control over global affairs, but what are the implications for America and the rest of the world? Much like a complex narrative, there are several potential outcomes to consider. Scenario 1. The United States adapts. It embraces multilateralism, strengthens alliances, invests in diplomacy and soft power, and focuses on areas where it still has a clear advantage, such as technology and innovation. Scenario 2. The United States retrenches. It adopts a more isolationist stance, prioritizing domestic issues over global engagement. And then there is Scenario 3, the hold my beer scenario. The United States intensifies its unilateral approach, engaging in risky confrontations, and further alienating allies. This path leads to a more divided, unstable, and potentially dangerous world. Is the United States losing its global influence? The short answer is yes, in certain respects. It is no longer the uncontested leader of a unipolar world, free to promote democracy or intervene in other nations at will. However, this does not imply that it is on the verge of collapse. The future hinges on how the United States adapts to a more competitive multipolar world. Will it embrace cooperation, diplomacy, and a more nuanced approach to global leadership? Or will it adhere to outdated strategies risking further decline and instability?